Hey everybody, Adam Davidson, RadCast for Tuesday, March the 7th, 2023. We're in Mark chapter 2. A few days later, when Jesus entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. It was his homecoming of sorts. They gathered in such large numbers, because they had heard about all the stuff he'd been doing, so they're like, we need to see this for ourselves. They get together in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. And he preached the word to them. So they actually stuck around for the sermon. What was he preaching about? Perhaps healing. Why? Well, look at what happens next in the story. Some men came bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by four of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, like the people just weren't moving. Excuse me, pardon me, paralyzed man trying to get through. People weren't budging. They wanted to hear the word. They couldn't get through the crowd, so they made an opening in the roof, which sounds destructive, but really isn't. They could fix it down the road. They made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. So imagine this scene where Jesus is sitting there teaching, and all of a sudden these crumbles of roof are coming down over his head. Did he ignore them? Did he look up at them? Did he use them to make a bigger point? Who knows? Speaking of bigger points, that had to be a good-sized hole for this man on a mat to be lowered into Jesus on. I mean, such a bizarre scene. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." And that's the word of the Lord. Now, couple of things. Isn't it interesting that the thing that Jesus says to the paralyzed man, the first thing he says is, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Imagine you're Jesus for a moment. What would you have said? What's the biggest presenting challenge for this guy in that moment? Why is he there? And what is the biggest aspect of his life? What's the largest consideration when it comes to his day-to-day experience? It's that he can't walk. Why have they brought him to Jesus? To fix the problem. And what does Jesus do? He fixes the wrong problem. I would have said, "You're healed. Get up. Get on out of here." He doesn't do that. He says, "Son, your sins are healed. You're forgiven." What an odd thing. But the more I thought about it, the more it makes sense. Because sin is really our biggest problem. It's not our physical healing. Physical healing is important, but sin is far, far, much, much bigger deal. Look at this prayer in the Psalm. Psalm 41:4 says this, "Have mercy on me, Lord, heal me, for I have sinned against you." So even the psalmist was praying for not a physical healing, but a spiritual healing. And perhaps they were connected, but nonetheless, the psalmist is like, you got to heal my soul. That is our biggest problem. So think of it this way. You're at a restaurant and the server brings out your drinks. You get water. Say you just get ice water with lemon, like Brittany always gets. And a few minutes later, after you put your order in, they bring out the food. And while they're putting the plate down, they knock over the water and it spills on the floor next to you. You know that sound of a plastic cup falling and ice just going everywhere? It just automatically, you start looking for napkins. And of course, the only one you find is the one you already blew your nose into. And it's gross. It's like this big thing, but it's really not a big deal, but it is at the same time. You just don't want ice water on your lap. So you start cleaning it up. But imagine that you noticed as they were setting the plate of food down, coming out of the kitchen to your table, you noticed that the server's hair is on fire. Right? And as you notice that the server's hair is on fire, their plate bumps your cup, your glass of water, it spills, but instinctively, instead of going to clean up the spill, you take another cup of water from the person you're eating with and you pour it on their head. This is what it's like when Jesus encounters people who are in need. He looks at the whole situation and he says, let's fix the biggest problem. We think that the biggest problem is some ice water on the floor. No, the biggest problem, the largest threat, is the fact that the server's hair is on fire. So we do the right thing by prioritizing the bigger problem. That's exactly what Jesus does. Jesus prioritizes spiritual health, which is eternal, over our physical health, which is temporary. And so I encourage you today, my friends, to take time, not to just ask Jesus for stuff and physical things and provision, but to let him search your heart and tap into the thing that matters most, which is your soul. Are you experiencing the healing of Jesus in your heart, in your mind? Are you giving him space to heal and to move and to do what only he can do? Because that's where our hair is on fire. It's not the ice water on the floor. It's the biggest crisis, our souls. And yet he has come to seek and save the lost, to heal, to forgive, to cleanse, and to make whole. That's RadCast.